Thanks for joining me. This is Danny, and welcome back to my Botania series. Today might be a shorter episode because we're going to be focusing on one thing, and that is automating the water in our Petal Apothecary. And we are going to do this exclusively with Botania and Vanilla redstone. Here are the ingredients that we are going to need in order to do that. We're going to need everything that you see to the right here. So some redstone, a couple of redstone torches, two redstone comparators, an open crate from Botania, a couple of item frames, four redstone repeaters, a few buckets, and one of them we're going to have full of water, a couple of hopper hocks, and a dropper, and a hopper, and a dispenser. So if you don't know what any of that stuff is, you will soon find out because we will see how all those things work. So first of all, you may already know that you can fill up the Petal Apothecary just by right-clicking on it with a bucket. And a lot of people take advantage of that by using a mechanical user or something to that effect to right-click on it. To right-click on it with a bucket. There's another way. Obviously, we don't have a way to do that with just Botania. But there's another way too. You can throw a bucket on top of the Petal Apothecary, and the water will go in the bucket, and you'll end up with an empty bucket just floating there. So that's the mechanic that we're going to take advantage of. And the best way to do that is with an open crate from Botania. So an open crate is kind of like a dropper from Minecraft, except that it drops immediately down. It doesn't have an inventory. As soon as it gets anything, it drops it. So that's how we're going to get the bucket there. And then we're going to have a little bit more of a complicated setup down here in order to get the bucket full of water and then to get the water bucket up there. So what the hopper hocks do, this is a functional flower from Botania that doesn't require mana. We can place a hopper hock, and whatever we throw on the ground will get picked up by the hopper hock within a certain range, and it'll be placed into a nearby inventory. In this case, the nearby inventory is the open crate. And it immediately gets dropped, as you saw. So we threw it down, and ended up getting dropped into the Petal Apothecary. And obviously that's not what we want to do. And we don't want it to pick up the empty buckets either. We only want it to pick up filled buckets. So that is what we have the item frames for. So if we place an item frame on our inventory, and place something in that item frame, so in this case we are going to place a filled bucket in that item frame, a bucket filled with water, and now we're telling our hopper hock, hey, we want you to pick up filled buckets. So if we throw a bucket down, it's just going to sit there. If we throw a filled bucket down, it's going to get picked up and dropped on our Petal Apothecary. Hooray, that's exactly what we want, right? So that's step one. Step two is, now how do we get the bucket up here? Or how do we get the bucket dropped in the world? So that's what we want, right? We want a bucket to be dropped in the world somewhere. So down here we're going to be building a little contraption that's going to be doing three things for us. One, it's going to be picking up empty buckets. It's going to be filling those buckets with water. And then when the Petal Apothecary is empty, it is going to dispense those buckets into the world, or drop those buckets into the world. And then, of course, our hopper hock will pick it up. So let's start at the beginning. So first of all, to fill up a bucket, an empty bucket with water, we're going to use a dispenser from Vanilla Minecraft. Now I've seen people use like mechanical users and such for this, and obviously it's not necessary. You can just do that with a dispenser. I'm actually going to throw a couple of blocks of wood here so that our water doesn't run everywhere when I break this block. So everywhere I've got cobblestone, that's basically where we're going to be putting, why is that not switching? That's where we're going to be placing blocks. Or placing our functional blocks. So we've got our dispenser, it's pointing into the water. I'm just going to leave that piece of cobblestone there to despawn. And now I'm going to get rid of these. And we want to get empty buckets into our dispenser. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to place an item frame and put an empty bucket in the item frame, and then we're going to place a hopper hock right next to it. Fortunately, we can place hopper hocks in the same block space as an item frame, so we can keep this nice and compact over here. So then how are we going to fill it up with water? We've got to get a redstone pulse to this dispenser, right? As soon as it gets a bucket. So one nice thing about dispensers is that, this is what we're going to use one of our comparators for, is that if you place a comparator facing out from the dispenser, it's going to output a redstone signal based on its inventory. So, and as it turns out, if we put a piece of redstone down here, we'll see that if we place an empty water bucket in there, it's going to give us an output of 1. If we place a full water bucket in there, oh, I came from the wrong side. Okay, if we place a full water bucket in there, it's going to output a redstone signal of 2. So we are going to use that to our advantage. So when we have an empty water bucket in here, the redstone signal is only going to get this far, because that's going to be 1. If we place another redstone piece of redstone here, the value of that piece of redstone is going to be 0, because this is 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our repeaters and we're going to place it over here to strengthen that signal so that we can run it over here into this block. And the reason we're running it into this block is because then that block will power our dispenser, which will basically pulse it when it first gets the redstone signal. When a bucket first ends up in there, it's going to get a redstone signal, which will pulse the dispenser. Now, the reason we're powering the block above the dispenser is because we don't want to power the hopper hawk. We don't want to power anything else that we're going to have down there. We're also going to have a hopper down there, and we're going to have a dropper right here. We don't want those powered. So now, if we put an empty bucket in there, it gets filled. So we get a single pulse because we have a constant redstone signal. It's going to get a single pulse that's going to cause it to fill up the bucket. And now we have a redstone strength of 2. So we're going to take this redstone signal. We're going to add a repeater right here. Let's light it up in here a little bit. And we're going to run this. Okay, so now, let me get that out of there for now. So then we're going to take a hopper. I'm going to break a couple blocks here so that I can get there. And we're going to put it right there, going into that block, and that block is going to be our dropper. So this is where our filled bucket is going to get dropped into the world. But now with this particular setup, if we put an empty bucket in here, it's going to disappear, right? And it's going to get put in our dropper because the hopper picks it up right away. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to take a redstone torch and we're going to place it against this block, and that is going to disable our hopper. So now if we put that empty bucket in there again, it's going to get filled and it sits there. It's not getting picked up. But of course, we do want it to get picked up once it's a water bucket, which means that it's going to have a redstone strength of 2, which is going to power this repeater. When this repeater is powered, we're going to run that power down here into that block. So we're going to use another one of our repeaters. Oh, actually, I think we actually need one more repeater. And it's going to power that block, which is going to turn off that redstone signal, which is going to power which is going to allow the hopper to work. We're going to give this a little bit of delay, otherwise it's going to end up triggering our dropper over here. So now, if we put an empty bucket in here, it's going to get filled up with water, and then it's going to end up in our dropper. Hooray! And then, actually, I'm going to put a block here. So now, we need to give this dropper a redstone signal when our Petal Apothecary is empty. If you set a comparator out here by a Petal Apothecary, it's going to output a redstone signal if the Petal Apothecary is full, and it's going to be a full redstone signal. So if we take the water out of the Petal Apothecary, we can see we lose our redstone signal. So we're going to use that to trigger our dropper downstairs. So we're going to run some redstone dust down here, here, here. Now, of course, we don't want it to give the dropper a redstone signal when there's water in the Petal Apothecary. We want it to give it a redstone signal when there's not water in the Petal Apothecary. So we are going to knot this. We're going to put a redstone torch here. And then we are going to grab a repeater. Altogether, we need 5 repeaters for this setup. And we're going to put it into there. And we can see it just did what it's supposed to do right there. So it dropped the full bucket in there, and you can see we now have an empty bucket. And then you can see that bucket got picked up and brought down here and is now sitting in this dropper again. Hooray! So that is it. That's the whole setup. If we take this water out, there we go. We're crafting some flour. We throw our seeds in there. We'd end up with an empty Petal Apothecary. And there we go. Now we have a full Petal Apothecary. And now we can do our next recipe by right-clicking with an empty hand. And there we have it. So that is fully automated. Hooray! This isn't necessarily the most compact. Well, it might be the most compact, but I wasn't really going for compactness. I was really going for my build. And the reason that I took the time to explain to you how this works rather than just showing you how to set it up is that you should be able to adapt this to any environment. I mean, we can run these redstone in any direction you want if it happens to fit your setup. And like this, you know, we could have made this shorter, but I wanted to have all this stuff down below the Petal Apothecary so that we can't see it. So that all we have above ground is this little weird little structure. Oh, I'm missing a block there. Let me just run through this one more time just to make sure that you understand it. Starting from the empty bucket. So we drop an empty bucket in the world. It gets picked up by this hopper hawk because it has an item frame with an empty bucket that's attached to the dispenser. The dispenser outputs a signal strength of 1 to a redstone comparator. That signal basically gets repeated back into the dispenser in a block that's one above the dispenser so that it doesn't trigger anything else. And that causes the bucket to be filled up with water. Once the bucket is filled with water, we get a redstone strength of 2, which brings the redstone signal out to this repeater, which heads down here, going into this block, which turns off that redstone torch, which allows the hopper to grab the full bucket and place it in the dropper. And then it just sits in the dropper for as long as it needs to. So it's sitting there right now. It sits in the dropper until this redstone torch gets or loses its redstone signal, which then triggers the dropper to drop it into the world. And of course, this thing loses its redstone signal from this comparator that's sticking out of the Petal Apothecary. When the Petal Apothecary is empty, no redstone signal is here. And once that bucket is sitting out in the world, once it's been ejected by that dropper, then this hopper hawk is going to pick it up because this hopper hawk is picking up water buckets and placing them into this open crate, which is then dropping it into the Petal Apothecary. And then we have an empty bucket, which then starts the whole process over again, and it gets picked up down here by this hopper hawk. So that's it. Pretty simple. Once you get your head around it, I mean, it's actually pretty simple. The hardest part is just figuring out how to lay all the redstone out so that it doesn't interfere with each other. That really was the most difficult part to doing this, was just making sure that the right things get triggered at the right times and that the wrong things don't get triggered as side effects. So, of course, if you do have any questions or comments about this, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or if you have questions about anything else. Or if you learned anything from this, or if you enjoyed it, please click the like button to let me know. So thanks for watching. I hope you join me next time. Bye-bye.